The blood-red wedding gown trailed behind Virginia Harrington as she fled through the dusty streets of Silver Creek, Montana. The summer heat of 1885 pressing down on her like a physical weight, tears blurring her vision as she ran from the life others had chosen for her. She could still hear the commotion behind her, her father's booming voice calling her name, her mother's horrified cries, and worst of all, the angry shouts of Edmund Blackwell, the man she was supposed to marry this very day. Virginia had never wanted this union, arranged by her banker father to merge two of the wealthiest families in the territory, but she'd been too afraid to speak up until the moment the preacher asked if anyone objected. To everyone's shock, including her own, she had been the one to do so. Now she ran blindly, her elaborate dress catching on fence posts and hitching rails, the expensive fabric tearing as she pushed forward, away from the town and everything she knew. She had no plan, just the desperate need to escape a future that felt like a prison sentence. At 22, she had spent her whole life being the dutiful daughter, but something inside her had finally broken. She couldn't marry a man who viewed her as nothing more than a pretty ornament and a business transaction. The town fell behind her as Virginia's feet carried her toward the open prairie. Her lungs burned and her legs ached, the fashionable boots she wore never meant for such exertion. The weight of her dress became unbearable, and she stumbled, falling to her knees at the edge of town where the road turned from packed dirt to wild grassland. "Whoa there," a deep voice called out. Virginia looked up, her tear-stained face meeting the concerned gaze of a man astride a chestnut stallion. The sun silhouetted him, casting his features in shadow beneath the wide brim of his worn leather hat. He dismounted in one fluid motion, approaching her with caution, as one might a wounded animal. "Are you all right, miss?" he asked, crouching down to her level. Virginia couldn't speak, her breath coming in ragged gasps. She glanced back toward town, where she could hear voices calling her name, drawing closer. The stranger followed her gaze, his eyes narrowing as understanding dawned on his weathered face. "You running from something?" she nodded, finally finding her voice. "Please," she whispered. "Help me." He studied her for a long moment, taking in the elaborate wedding dress, the desperation in her eyes, and the approaching search party. With a decisive nod, he extended his hand. "Name's Adam Prescott," he said, his voice rough but gentle. "And it seems to me you could use a place to catch your breath." Virginia hesitated only briefly before placing her trembling hand in his calloused one. "Virginia Harrington," she replied, allowing him to help her to her feet. "Well, Miss Harrington," Adam said, leading her to his horse, "I reckon we'd best make ourselves scarce." In one swift motion, he lifted her onto his horse, then swung up behind her. With a click of his tongue and a gentle nudge of his heels, the stallion took off across the prairie, away from Silver Creek, and the life Virginia was leaving behind. The horse's powerful strides carried them swiftly across the Montana landscape, the rolling hills and tall grasses creating a golden ocean that swallowed them whole. Virginia clung to the saddle horn, the reality of what she'd done crashing over her in waves. She had fled her own wedding, abandoned her family, and was now riding off with a stranger, a cowboy she knew nothing about beyond his name. "Where are we going?" she finally asked, her voice nearly lost in the wind. "I've got a cabin," Adam replied, his voice close to her ear. "About 2 hours' ride from here. It's not much, but it's private. You'll be safe there until you figure out what you want to do next." Virginia nodded, not trusting herself to speak again. The adrenaline that had propelled her out of the church was fading, leaving her exhausted and uncertain. But underneath that fatigue lay something else, a strange sense of freedom she had never experienced before. As they rode, the sun began its descent, painting the prairie in hues of orange and pink. Adam kept a steady pace, occasionally scanning their surroundings with the watchful eye of a man accustomed to the wilderness. Virginia found herself studying what she could see of him from her position, the strong arms that held the reins on either side of her, the faint scent of leather and pine that clung to him, the gentle way he handled his horse. "You want to tell me what you're running from?" he asked after they'd ridden in silence for nearly an hour. Virginia sighed. "A wedding, my wedding," Figured as much, given the dress, Adam replied, a hint of amusement in his voice. Cold feet, more like a cold heart, Virginia said bitterly. His, not mine. Edmund Blackwell cares more about my father's banking connections than he ever could about me. Adam was quiet for a moment. Arranged marriage. Yes, our fathers have been planning it since I was 16. Edmund is 35 and has buried 2 wives already. Virginia shuddered. Everyone says it's a good match, prestigious, secure. But not what you want, Adam observed. No, Virginia whispered, not what I want at all. They fell silent again as the horse carried them deeper into the wilderness. The landscape began to change, rolling hills giving way to more rugged terrain with scattered pine trees. In the distance, the silhouette of mountains rose against the darkening sky. Almost there, Adam said as they followed a narrow trail that wound through a stand of pines. My place is just beyond that ridge. The cabin appeared suddenly, nestled in a small clearing surrounded by trees. It was modest but sturdy-looking, built of rough-hewn logs with a stone chimney on one side. A small corral stood empty beside it, and a stream trickled nearby, catching the last rays of sunlight. Adam dismounted first, then reached up to help Virginia down. Her legs nearly buckled beneath her, stiff from the long ride and weak from the day's events. Adam caught her by the elbows, steadying her. Easy now, he murmured. Been a long day for you. Virginia nodded, suddenly aware of how close they were standing. She could see his features clearly now, a strong jaw covered in several days' worth of stubble, lines at the corners of his eyes that spoke of years squinting against the sun, and those eyes themselves a deep blue that reminded her of the Montana sky in autumn. Adam stepped back, seemingly aware of her scrutiny. Let me tend to thunder here, then we'll get you settled. Virginia nodded, watching as he led the chestnut stallion to the corral, removing the saddle and bridle with practiced motions. She took the opportunity to look around, taking in what would apparently be her sanctuary for at least the night. The cabin stood solid against the backdrop of wilderness, a testament to someone's skill and determination. A small porch fronted the structure with a rocking chair that had seen better days. The windows were small but clean, and smoke-stained curtains hung inside, suggesting that this was more than just a temporary shelter. It's not much, Adam said, returning to her side, but it's home. It's lovely, Virginia replied honestly. After a lifetime of her father's ostentatious mansion in town, there was something appealing about the cabin's simplicity. Adam gave her a skeptical look but didn't argue. He moved past her to open the door, gesturing for her to enter. Ladies first. Virginia gathered her tattered wedding dress, now stained with dust and grass, and stepped inside. The interior was dim, lit only by the fading daylight through the windows, but she could make out the basic layout: one large room with a stone fireplace, a rough wooden table with 2 chairs, a bed in the corner covered with furs and homespun blankets, and shelves holding various supplies. Adam moved around her to light a lantern hanging from a beam, casting a warm glow throughout the space. Not exactly what you're used to, I expect, he said, watching her reaction carefully. Virginia turned to face him. No, it's not, she admitted. But right now, it looks like heaven compared to where I was supposed to be. A small smile tugged at the corner of Adam's mouth. Well then, welcome to heaven, Miss Harrington. He gestured to a trunk at the foot of the bed. I might have some clothes that could work for you. Nothing fancy, mind you, but more practical than. He waved a hand at her bedraggled wedding gown. Thank you, Virginia said softly, for everything. I don't know what I would have done if you hadn't come along. Adam shrugged, looking slightly uncomfortable with her gratitude. Just happened to be in the right place, or the wrong one, depending on how you look at it. He moved to the fireplace, kneeling to arrange kindling and logs. You hungry? I can fix us something simple. Virginia realized she hadn't eaten since early morning, too nervous about the wedding to manage more than a few bites of breakfast. Yes, actually, I'm starving. Adam nodded, focusing on starting the fire. There's water in that bucket if you want to clean up. I'll step out while you change. The normalcy of his actions building a fire, offering food and clothes helped calm Virginia's frayed nerves. This strange man with his quiet manner was treating her situation with a matter-of-factness that made it seem less overwhelming. Once the fire was crackling, Adam showed her the trunk of clothes, then excused himself to retrieve something from a small storage shed behind the cabin. Virginia waited until the door closed behind him before approaching the trunk. Inside, she found men's clothing, plain cotton shirts, denim trousers, a few bandanas, and a single nightshirt that looked barely worn. Virginia chose the nightshirt, reasoning it would be most comfortable, then struggled with the dozens of buttons and hooks that secured her wedding dress. After several frustrated minutes, she was forced to admit defeat. Her mother's lady's maid had helped her into the gown that morning, and it clearly required assistance to remove. When Adam returned with a burlap sack of what appeared to be potatoes and onions, Virginia was still fully dressed, standing awkwardly by the trunk. "Everything all right?" he asked, setting the sack on the table. Virginia felt her cheeks flush with embarrassment. I can't get out of this dress by myself. There are too many buttons and I can't reach them all." Adam's eyes widened slightly, and Virginia thought she detected a faint coloring on his tan cheeks as well. "Oh, right," he cleared his throat. "I can help if you're comfortable with that. Or—" "There isn't really an or out here, is there?" Virginia said with a nervous laugh. "Unless you have a lady neighbor hidden away somewhere." Adam shook his head. "Afraid not. Nearest neighbor is old Jim Peterson, about 5 miles east, and he's even less qualified to help with ladies' fashion than I am." Virginia took a deep breath. "Then I would appreciate your help, Mr. Prescott." "Adam," he corrected gently. "If I'm going to be unbuttoning your wedding dress, I think we can use first names." Virginia nodded, turning her back to him. "Very well, Adam." She felt him move closer, felt the warmth of his presence behind her. There was a moment of hesitation, then his fingers were at the nape of her neck, carefully working the first of many tiny pearl buttons. "Tell me if I'm being too rough," he said, his voice low. "Never done this before." "You're doing fine," Virginia assured him, trying to ignore the unusual intimacy of the moment. This morning, it had been her mother and the maid fussing over these same buttons, preparing her for a marriage she didn't want. Now it was this stranger Adam undoing their work with surprising gentleness. His fingers worked methodically down her spine, each unfastened button loosening the fabric that had felt increasingly like a cage throughout the day. Virginia found herself relaxing slightly, the tension in her shoulders easing as the dress began to give way. "Almost done," Adam said after a few minutes. "These are mighty small buttons for a man's hands." Virginia smiled despite herself. "They're not designed with practicality in mind." "Just like the rest of this dress. It's a beautiful dress," Adam observed, "or was before your escape across the prairie." "My father spared no expense," Virginia replied. "It's imported from Paris, cost more than most people make in a year." Adam let out a low whistle. "Your father must be quite wealthy." "He owns the bank in Silver Creek," Virginia explained, "and has investments in several mining operations. Edmund, my almost husband, owns half the cattle ranches in the territory." "And here you are in a one-room cabin with a saddle tramp," Adam said, a note of irony in his voice as he unfastened the last button. "There, you're free." The choice of words wasn't lost on Virginia. She clutched the front of the dress to prevent it from falling. "Thank you, I'll just—" "Of course," Adam said quickly, turning away. "I'll step outside again, give you some privacy. Take your time." Once alone, Virginia let the wedding dress fall to the floor, a pool of crimson silk and pearls. She stood for a moment in just her chemise and petticoats, looking down at the discarded gown. It represented everything she'd been running from: expectations, obligations, a life mapped out by others with no regard for her own desires. She quickly removed the rest of her undergarments and slipped the nightshirt over her head. It was far too large, hanging past her knees and with sleeves that covered her hands, but the soft cotton felt wonderfully light after the weight of the wedding attire. She used water from the bucket to wash her face and hands, then ran her fingers through her hair, removing the few remaining pins that had survived her flight. "You can come back in," she called when she was decent. Adam entered, carrying an armful of firewood. His eyes widened slightly at the sight of her in his nightshirt, hair loose around her shoulders, but he quickly averted his gaze, moving to stack the wood beside the fireplace. "Feel better?" he asked. "Much," Virginia replied, "though I'm not sure what to do with this." She gestured to the crumpled wedding dress on the floor. Adam glanced at it. "We can figure that out tomorrow. For now, let's get some food in you." He moved to the small kitchen area, setting a cast iron skillet on the cook stove that adjoined the fireplace. With efficient movements, he sliced potatoes and onions, adding them to the pan with a generous portion of bacon fat. From a small cupboard, he produced a jar of preserved venison, which he added to the mixture. Virginia watched him work, impressed by his competence. "You cook often?" "Every day," Adam replied with a shrug. "Man's got to eat." "Most men I know would starve before learning to cook," Virginia observed. "They expect women to handle such things." Adam gave her a sideways glance. "Not much chance of that out here. It was learned to cook or live on jerky and hardtack." He stirred the contents of the skillet. "Besides, my ma taught all her children, boys and girls alike, said it was a necessary skill, not a woman's duty." "Your mother sounds like a wise woman," Virginia said, settling into one of the chairs at the table. "She was," Adam agreed, a hint of sadness in his voice making it clear his mother was no longer living. They fell into a comfortable silence as Adam finished preparing the simple meal. The aroma of cooking food filled the cabin, making Virginia's stomach growl audibly. Adam pretended not to notice, but she caught the slight smile on his face as he spooned the mixture onto 2 tin plates. "It's not fancy," he said, placing a plate before her along with a fork, "but it'll fill you up." Virginia didn't wait for ceremony, digging in with an enthusiasm that would have horrified her mother. The food was simple but delicious, the potatoes crisp on the outside and tender within, the venison rich and flavorful. "This is wonderful," she said between bites. "Truly." Adam looked pleased as he took the seat across from her. "Glad you like it. Not exactly the wedding feast you were expecting today, I reckon." Virginia paused, her fork halfway to her mouth. "No, but I'm enjoying it far more than I would have that one." They ate in silence for a while, both hungry after the long ride. When her plate was clean, Virginia sat back, suddenly aware of how exhausted she was. The events of the day, the wedding preparations, her dramatic flight, the long ride had drained her completely. Adam noticed her fatigue. "You should take the bed," he said, rising to clear their plates. "I'll sleep by the fire." Virginia started to protest, but a yawn interrupted her. "I've imposed enough, I can't take your bed." "You're not imposing if you're invited," Adam pointed out. "And I've slept on worse than a cabin floor many a night." "Take the bed, Virginia, you need rest." Too tired to argue further, Virginia nodded. "Thank you for everything. I don't know how I'll ever repay you." Adam shook his head. "No need for that, get some sleep. Tomorrow we can figure out what comes next." The mention of next sent a flutter of anxiety through Virginia's chest. She had acted on impulse with no thought to what would follow her dramatic escape. Where would she go? What would she do? She had no money of her own, no skills that would earn her a living. As if reading her thoughts, Adam spoke again. "Don't worry about tomorrow just yet. You're safe here for as long as you need." His words eased some of her anxiety. Virginia moved to the bed, which was indeed inviting with its pile of furs and blankets. She slipped beneath the covers, surprised at how comfortable the straw-filled mattress felt to her weary body. From the bed, she watched as Adam washed their dishes in a basin, then spread a bedroll on the floor near the fire. His movements were efficient and practiced, those of a man accustomed to taking care of himself. There was something comforting about his quiet competence. "Adam," she said softly as he settled onto his bedroll. He turned to look at her, his face illuminated by the firelight. "Thank you for catching my hand today. I don't know what would have happened if you hadn't." Adam's expression softened. "Get some sleep, Virginia, you're safe now." As she drifted towards sleep, Virginia realized that for the first time in years, she truly felt safe not because someone was protecting her or controlling her path, but because she had finally taken control of it herself. And somehow, this stranger, this cowboy with his quiet strength and simple cabin, had become an unexpected ally in her bid for freedom. The next morning, Virginia woke to the smell of coffee and the sound of movement in the cabin. For a moment she was disoriented, the unfamiliar surroundings confusing her sleep-addled mind. Then the events of the previous day came rushing back: the wedding, her flight, Adam Prescott and his cabin. She sat up, pushing her tangled hair from her face. Adam stood by the cook stove, his back to her as he tended to something in a pan. He was already dressed for the day in a faded blue shirt and worn denim trousers, his dark hair still damp from washing. "Morning," he said without turning around, somehow sensing she was awake. "Coffee's ready if you want some." Virginia slipped from the bed, aware of how she must look in his oversized nightshirt, hair wild from sleep. "Good morning," she replied, running her fingers through her hair in a futile attempt to tame it. "Coffee sounds wonderful." Adam turned, a steaming mug in his hand, and Virginia saw a momentary widening of his eyes before he schooled his expression. He extended the mug to her. "Sleep all right, better than I expected," she admitted, accepting the coffee gratefully. The mug warmed her hands, and the rich aroma helped clear the last cobwebs from her mind. "What time is it?" "Just past sunrise," Adam replied, turning back to the stove. "Figured you could use the rest, so I tried to be quiet." Virginia took a sip of the coffee, strong and black, nothing like the milky, sweetened version she was accustomed to, but somehow perfect for the moment. "What are you making?" "Flapjacks," Adam said. "Nothing fancy, but they'll stick to your ribs." "It smells delicious," Virginia said honestly. She moved to the table, sitting in the same chair she'd occupied the night before. From this vantage point, she could observe Adam as he worked, noting the easy confidence of his movements. "I was thinking," Adam said as he flipped a golden-brown flapjack, "you might want to send word to your folks. Let them know you're safe, at least." Virginia tensed. "They'll try to make me go back." Adam glanced over his shoulder at her. "Probably, but they're likely worried sick, especially your ma." Guilt washed over Virginia. Her mother would indeed be frantic, though her father was probably more concerned with the embarrassment she'd caused than her safety. "I can't go back," she said firmly. "Not to marry Edmund." "Didn't say you should," Adam replied, sliding 2 flapjacks onto a plate. "Just said you might want to let them know you're alive and well. Ease their minds a bit." Virginia considered his words as he placed the plate before her, along with a small jar of honey. "Perhaps you're right, but I don't know how to contact them without revealing where I am." Adam sprinkled a pinch of salt into the remaining batter. "Could send a telegram from Willow Bend. It's a small settlement about 10 miles east of here. Not many folks there know me, and fewer still would recognize you." Virginia drizzled honey onto her flapjacks, considering the suggestion. "That might work, but what would I say?" "The truth, I reckon," Adam said, pouring more batter into the pan. "That you're safe, that you're sorry for worrying them, but that you can't marry Edmund." Virginia took a bite of her breakfast, surprised again by how good simple food could taste. "My father won't accept that. He'll tear the territory apart looking for me." Adam turned from the stove, fixing her with a direct gaze. "Then you need to decide what you want, Virginia, where you want to go from here. Can't hide in my cabin forever." The blunt truth of his words stung, but Virginia knew he was right. Her impulsive flight had won her a temporary reprieve, but it wasn't a solution. "I don't know what I want," she admitted quietly. "I just know what I don't want." Adam nodded, turning back to his cooking. "That's a start, at least." They ate breakfast mostly in silence, Virginia lost in thoughts of her uncertain future, Adam seemingly content to give her space to think. When they finished, he rose to clear the dishes. "I've got chores to tend to," he said. "Make yourself at home. There are some books on that shelf if you get bored. Not much else in the way of entertainment, I'm afraid." Virginia nodded, suddenly realizing how little she knew about this man who had taken her in. "Adam, what exactly do you do? You mentioned being a saddle tramp, but—" A faint smile crossed his face. "Bit of everything. I break horses mostly, moving from ranch to ranch where I'm needed, do some hunting and trapping in the winter, occasional cattle drives in the summer." "So you're not tied to any one place?" Virginia asked. "No, madam," Adam replied. "This cabin's the closest thing I've had to a permanent home in years. Bought it off a fellow who was heading back east. It's a good place to winter or to rest between jobs." "It suits you," Virginia observed. "Simple but solid." Something flickered in Adam's eyes, surprise, perhaps, or appreciation for her understanding. "It does at that." He moved to the door. I shouldn't be more than an hour or so. There's more coffee in the pot if you want it. After he left, Virginia took the opportunity to explore the cabin more thoroughly. The bookshelves held an eclectic collection, some penny dreadfuls, a few serious novels, a worn Bible, and several books on horses and wilderness survival. A small writing desk in the corner contained paper, ink, and a few well-worn pencils, along with letters tied with string correspondence from family, perhaps. Virginia resisted the urge to read the letters, respecting Adam's privacy. Instead, she moved to the trunk of clothing, seeking something more suitable to wear than the nightshirt. She selected the smallest shirt she could find, still enormously oversized on her frame, and a pair of trousers that she had to roll at the waist and ankles to make even remotely wearable. A leather belt cinched around her waist helped keep the trousers from falling down entirely. She caught a glimpse of herself in a small shaving mirror hanging on the wall and almost laughed aloud. With her hair loose around her shoulders and dressed in men's clothing many sizes too large, she looked nothing like the banker's daughter who had been primped and polished for a society wedding just yesterday. There was something liberating about the transformation. When Adam returned, he paused in the doorway, taking in her appearance with raised eyebrows. "Well," he said after a moment, "that's a look." Virginia spread her arms. "It's the best I could do with what was available. I can hardly spend the day in a nightshirt." A smile tugged at the corner of Adam's mouth. Can't argue with that logic. He entered the cabin, removing his hat and hanging it on a peg by the door. "Thought about what you want to do next?" Virginia sighed, sinking into a chair. "I've been thinking about it all morning. I should contact my parents, as you suggested, but after that." She shook her head. "I have nowhere to go, Adam. I have no money of my own, no skills that would earn me a living." Adam leaned against the table, arms crossed over his chest. "What can you do?" "Besides being a banker's daughter, I mean." Virginia considered the question. "I can read and write well. I speak French passably. I play the piano, though that's hardly useful out here. I can sew, though not as well as our housekeeper." She laughed bitterly. "Nothing particularly useful in the real world. Reading and writing are plenty useful," Adam pointed out. "Might be able to find work as a schoolteacher somewhere." Virginia brightened at the suggestion. "I hadn't thought of that. I did help tutor some of the younger children in town occasionally." Her enthusiasm dimmed slightly. "But any town large enough to need a teacher would have heard about my scandal. Word travels fast in the territories." Adam nodded thoughtfully. "True enough. Might need to travel further afield. Oregon, maybe, or California." The suggestion of traveling so far from everything she knew was both terrifying and exhilarating. "I wouldn't even know how to begin such a journey, or how to pay for it." "One step at a time," Adam advised. "First, let's get that telegram sent. Then we can figure out the rest." He straightened up from the table. "Feel up to a ride to Willow Bend?" Virginia nodded, grateful for his practical approach. "Yes, I think that would be good." "We'll need to find you something more suitable to wear in public," Adam said, eyeing her makeshift outfit with amusement. "Those trousers are like to fall right off you if you sneeze." Virginia laughed, the sound surprising her. When was the last time she had laughed freely? "I don't suppose Willow Bend has a ladies' clothing shop." "Afraid not," Adam replied. "But there's a general store that might have something that would work better than those." He gestured to a shelf near the bed. "I keep some cash in that tin. Take what you need." Virginia's eyes widened. "I couldn't. You've already done so much." Adam shrugged. "Consider it a loan if it makes you feel better. You can pay me back when you're a famous schoolteacher in San Francisco." His casual generosity touched something deep within her. This man, who lived so simply and asked for nothing, was offering her not just shelter but a path forward. "Thank you," she said softly. "I will pay you back, I promise." Adam gave her a slight nod, seeming almost embarrassed by her gratitude. "We'll head out in about an hour. Should reach Willow Bend by midday." The ride to Willow Bend was far more pleasant than the frantic journey of the previous day. Virginia sat behind Adam on Thunder, her arms loosely around his waist for balance. The day was clear and mild, the Montana landscape stretching out around them in breathtaking vistas of rolling hills and distant mountains. Adam pointed out landmarks as they rode a distinctive rock formation, a creek that flowed year-round, a stand of aspens that would turn golden in the fall. His knowledge of the land was intimate and respectful, that of a man who lived in harmony with his surroundings rather than attempting to conquer them. Virginia found herself relaxing into the journey, her initial awkwardness at the close proximity fading as they talked. Adam spoke more freely away from the cabin, telling her about his childhood in Missouri, his 3 sisters who still lived there with their families, his decision to head west after the war. "Were you a soldier?" Virginia asked, curious about the reference. "Union cavalry," Adam replied. "Joined up in '63 when I was 18, saw the tail end of the fighting." Virginia absorbed this information, trying to reconcile it with the man she was coming to know. "Is that why you came west, after the war?" Adam was quiet for a moment. "Partly, Missouri was complicated after the fighting stopped. Too many old grudges, too much bitterness. Wanted a fresh start somewhere folks didn't know me or my family." Virginia understood the desire for a fresh start all too well. "And did you find it, what you were looking for?" "Some days I think so," Adam replied thoughtfully. "Other days I'm not sure what I was looking for to begin with." The honest vulnerability in his answer surprised her. Most men of her acquaintance would have given some boastful reply about conquering the frontier or making their fortune. Adam's thoughtful uncertainty was refreshing. They reached Willow Bend just before noon, as Adam had predicted. It was indeed a small settlement, just a cluster of buildings along a dirt road, with a few scattered homesteads visible in the distance. A far cry from Silver Creek's pretensions to civilization, but Virginia found something appealing in its unpretentious functionality. Adam helped her dismount outside the general store, a weathered building with a wooden porch and a faded sign. "You go on in and see what they've got," he said. "I'll tie Thunder up and meet you inside." The store was dimly lit and cluttered, shelves crammed with everything from tools and hardware to foodstuffs and fabric. A middle-aged woman with graying hair pulled back in a severe bun looked up from behind the counter as Virginia entered. "Morning," the woman said, her curious gaze taking in Virginia's unusual attire. "Something I can help you find." Virginia straightened her shoulders, trying to project more confidence than she felt. "Good morning. I'm in need of some ladies' clothing, something practical for riding and everyday wear." The woman's eyes narrowed slightly. "Don't get much call for ladies' riding clothes out here. Got some work dresses and plain skirts. Might have a split riding skirt somewhere in the back." "That would be perfect, thank you," Virginia said gratefully. The door opened behind her and Adam entered, removing his hat as he stepped inside. The shopkeeper's expression changed immediately, warming with recognition. "Adam Prescott, as I live and breathe," she said, her stern demeanor softening. "Haven't seen you in these parts for months. Mrs. Thornton," Adam greeted her with a respectful nod. "Been keeping to my cabin mostly. How's Mr. Thornton's rheumatism?" "Better in the summer, worse when it rains," she replied. "Who's your friend?" Her gaze shifted to Virginia, the question loaded with unspoken curiosity. Adam didn't hesitate. "This is my cousin, Virginia, from back east. She's visiting for a spell, but her luggage got lost on the journey. Needs some practical clothes." Virginia tried not to show her surprise at the smooth lie. Mrs. Thornton looked skeptical but didn't challenge the story. "Well, let's see what we can find for your cousin," she said, emphasizing the words slightly as she moved from behind the counter. "This way, dear." Virginia followed the woman to the back of the store, where a small selection of women's clothing hung from hooks on the wall. Mrs. Thornton sorted through the items, occasionally holding something up against Virginia to check the size. "You're a small thing," she commented. "Most women out here are more substantial. Hard living puts meat on your bones." Virginia didn't know how to respond to that, so she simply nodded. Mrs. Thornton selected 2 simple work dresses in faded blue and brown, a split riding skirt in sturdy canvas, and a white cotton shirtwaist. "These should do," she said. "There's a room behind that curtain where you can try them on if you like." Virginia thanked her and retreated behind the curtain to try on the riding skirt and shirtwaist. They were plain and utilitarian, nothing like the fine clothes she was accustomed to, but they fit reasonably well and would be far more practical than Adam's oversized clothing. She changed quickly, emerging in her new outfit. Adam's eyes widened slightly when he saw her, and Virginia felt a flicker of something warm in her chest at his reaction. The clothes were hardly flattering by society standards, but something in his gaze made her feel suddenly self-conscious in a not entirely unpleasant way. "Much better," Mrs. Thornton declared, circling Virginia with a critical eye. "You'll need proper undergarments too, I expect. And a hat for the sun. Your city complexion won't last a week out here otherwise." By the time they finished, Virginia had a small but functional wardrobe, including the necessities Mrs. Thornton had tactfully mentioned. Adam paid without comment, though Virginia noted the total with a pang of guilt, adding it to the mental tally of her debt to him. "The telegraph office is just down the street," Adam said as they left the store, Virginia now properly attired in her new clothes, the rest bundled in a package under her arm. "You thought about what you want to say?" Virginia nodded, her stomach knotting with anxiety at the prospect of contacting her family. "Yes, I think so." The telegraph office was a small, tidy room attached to the local post office. A bespectacled young man sat behind the counter, looking bored until they entered. "Need to send a telegram," Adam said, laying coins on the counter. The operator pushed a pencil and form toward them. "Write your message here, 10 cents a word." Virginia took the pencil with a slightly trembling hand. After a moment's hesitation, she began to write to Mr. Howard Harrington, Silver Creek, Montana from Virginia Harrington, mother and father, stop. I am safe and well. Stop. Cannot return to Mary Edmund. Stop. Forgive me for the public manner of my refusal. Stop. Will contact again. When settled. Stop. Please do not search for me. Stop. All my love, Virginia. She counted the words carefully, calculating the cost, then handed the form to Adam for his approval. He read it quickly, then nodded and passed it to the operator with the appropriate payment. "Any reply should be directed where?" the young man asked. Virginia hesitated, looking to Adam. "No reply necessary," Adam answered for her. "When will this be sent?" "Right away," the operator assured them. "Should reach Silver Creek within the hour." Virginia felt a strange mix of relief and anxiety as they left the telegraph office. She had done what she could to ease her parents' worry, but she had also confirmed her decision not to return. There was no going back now. "Hungry?" Adam asked as they stepped into the street. "There's a small cafe that serves decent food. Thought we might get dinner before heading back." Virginia nodded, grateful for the suggestion. The emotional strain of the morning had left her drained, and food would help restore her energy for the ride home. Home. The word came unbidden to her mind, referring to Adam's cabin. It wasn't her home, of course, merely a temporary shelter, but something about it had felt instantly comfortable in a way her father's grand house in Silver Creek never had. The cafe was a simple establishment with a half-dozen tables, most occupied by locals who gave them curious glances as they entered. Adam guided Virginia to a table in the corner, positioning himself so he could see the door, a habit she had noticed that seemed ingrained in him. A plump, cheerful woman approached their table, wiping her hands on her apron. "Adam Prescott, twice in 1 year we're honored," she teased, "and with a lady friend no less, will wonders never cease." Adam's cheeks colored slightly. "Afternoon, Maggie, this is Virginia. She's visiting from back east." "So I heard from Martha Thornton not 10 minutes ago," Maggie replied with a knowing smile. "News travels fast in Willow Bend. What can I get you too?" "Whatever's hot," Adam replied. "And some coffee, please." "Same for me," Virginia added. When Maggie departed, Virginia raised an eyebrow at Adam. "Martha Thornton works quickly, it seems," Adam sighed. "Small towns, everyone knows everyone's business or thinks they do." "And what business do they think they know about us?" Virginia asked, curious despite herself. Adam met her gaze steadily. "They think you're my woman, not my cousin. Probably figure you ran off with me or that I brought you out from somewhere else." Virginia felt her cheeks warm. "Oh, it's a protective story," Adam explained. "Better they think that than the truth. A runaway bride would cause more gossip, and someone might connect you to Silver Creek." Virginia nodded, understanding his logic. "It's fine, better than fine actually, it's safer." Their food arrived, bowls of hearty beef stew with thick slices of homemade bread interrupting the suddenly charged atmosphere between them. They ate in companionable silence, both hungry after the morning's activities. As they finished their meal, the door to the cafe opened, admitting 3 dusty cowboys. They were loud and boisterous, clearly having already visited the saloon across the street. Virginia kept her head down, not wanting to attract attention, but she felt Adam tense across from her. "We should go," he said quietly, laying coins on the table to pay for their meal. Virginia nodded, rising from her chair. But they weren't quick enough. One of the cowboys spotted them and let out a low whistle. "Well, look who it is, the lone wolf of Timber Creek," he called out, his voice slurred with alcohol. "And with a pretty little thing, too. Where'd you find her, Prescott? She know what you did in the war." Adam's face hardened, but his voice remained calm. "Let it be, Jackson, we're just leaving." The man Jackson stepped into their path. He was tall and rangy, with a face weathered by sun and drink and eyes that held a mean gleam. "Don't be unfriendly now. Aren't you going to introduce us to your lady friend?" Virginia felt Adam's hand at the small of her back, a steadying presence. "My name is Virginia," she said, keeping her voice even. "And we really must be going." Jackson's bloodshot eyes swept over her with an appreciation that made her skin crawl. "Virginia, huh? Pretty name for a pretty lady. What's a fine thing like you doing with a killer like Prescott?" The word landed like a blow. Virginia felt Adam go completely still beside her, his hand dropping from her back. "That's enough, Jackson," one of the other cowboys said, looking uncomfortable. "Leave them be." But Jackson wasn't finished. "She ought to know what kind of man she's riding with." "The stories they tell about Prescott during the war, shut your mouth," Adam said, his voice deadly quiet, "or I'll shut it for you." The tension in the small cafe was suddenly thick enough to cut. The other patrons had gone silent, watching the confrontation with wary eyes. Maggie appeared from the kitchen, her jovial expression replaced with concern. "Take it outside if you're looking for trouble, Jackson," she said firmly. "I won't have fighting in my place." Jackson sneered but stepped back. "No need for fighting, just making conversation." He tipped his hat mockingly toward Virginia. "Madam." Adam guided Virginia around the man and toward the door, his face expressionless but his body coiled with tension. Virginia could feel the rigid set of his shoulders beneath her hand as she placed it on his arm. They walked in silence to where Thunder was hitched, Adam's jaw clenched tight, his eyes scanning the street as if expecting further confrontation. Only when they were mounted and leaving town did Virginia dare to speak. "Adam," she began carefully. "What that man said, forget it," Adam cut her off, his voice clipped. "Jackson's a drunk and a troublemaker, always has been." Virginia fell silent, sensing his unwillingness to discuss the matter further. But the incident had shaken her, raising questions about the man who had become her protector. What had he done during the war that would cause such animosity? What didn't she know about Adam Prescott? The ride back to the cabin was tense and mostly silent, a stark contrast to their earlier journey. Virginia found herself studying Adam's rigid back, wondering about the demons he carried. Everyone had secrets, she knew. God knows she had her own desires and ambitions that would shock her proper family if they knew. Who was she to judge this man who had shown her nothing but kindness? As the cabin came into view, Adam finally spoke. "I'm sorry about that," he said, his voice low. "Jackson and his kind are why I keep to myself mostly." "You don't owe me an explanation," Virginia replied carefully. Adam was quiet for a long moment, then sighed. "Maybe I do. You're staying in my cabin, trusting me. You should know who you're trusting." He dismounted when they reached the corral, then helped Virginia down. Instead of leading Thunder to the stable immediately, he stood before her, his blue eyes serious. "I did things during the war I'm not proud of," he said simply. "Was part of a cavalry unit that operated behind Confederate lines. We were effective, brutal, some would say. I was young and angry and believed in the cause." He paused, his gaze distant. "After a while, it wasn't about the cause anymore. It was just about survival, about becoming the kind of man who could do what needed doing." Virginia listened, her heart aching at the pain evident in his voice. "When the war ended, I couldn't go back to being the farm boy I was before," Adam continued. "Couldn't look my ma in the eye knowing what I'd become, so I came west, thought I could outrun it." A bitter smile touched his lips. but there's always someone like Jackson to remind you. The past doesn't stay buried out here. Virginia reached out impulsively, placing her hand on his arm. The war made monsters of many men on both sides. What matters is who you choose to be now. Adam looked down at her hand, then up to her face. Something in his expression softened. You're a surprising woman, Virginia Harrington. As you're a surprising man, Adam Prescott, she replied quietly. A moment of understanding passed between them, deep and wordless. Then Adam stepped back, breaking the connection. Should get thunder settled, you go on inside. Virginia nodded, gathering her packages from the general store. As she walked to the cabin, she found herself contemplating the complex man who had entered her life so unexpectedly. There was darkness in his past, yes, but also a fundamental decency that couldn't be hidden. And wasn't that true of everyone? Weren't they all a mixture of light and shadow, of good intentions and regrettable actions? The next several days fell into a surprisingly comfortable routine. Virginia helped with chores around the cabin, learning from Adam how to tend the small vegetable garden, feed the chickens he kept for eggs, and even chop kindling for the fire. Her soft hands blistered and her muscles ached, but there was satisfaction in the work that she had never found in the endless round of social calls and piano practice that had filled her days in Silver Creek. Adam proved to be a patient teacher, never commenting on her initial clumsiness or the mistakes she made. Instead, he demonstrated tasks clearly and praised her progress, however small. Virginia found herself looking forward to these shared activities, to the quiet conversations that accompanied them, to the gradual unveiling of Adam's thoughtful, complex character. In the evenings, they would sit by the fire, Adam often whittling or repairing tack while Virginia read aloud from one of his books. She discovered he had a keen mind despite his limited formal education, with thoughtful opinions on everything from politics to philosophy. Their discussions often lasted late into the night, neither of them willing to end the conversation and retire to bed. It was during one such evening, about a week after her arrival, that Virginia finally broached the subject of her future. "I've been thinking," she said, setting aside the book they had been discussing, "about what comes next for me." Adam looked up from the bridle he was mending, his expression carefully neutral. "Oh," Virginia nodded, suddenly nervous, "I can't impose on your hospitality indefinitely. And as peaceful as it is here, I need to find my own way." She took a deep breath. "I think your suggestion about teaching was a good one. I've been looking at that map you have, thinking about where I might go." Adam set his work aside, giving her his full attention. "And where have you decided?" "Oregon, I think," Virginia replied. "It's far enough from Montana that news of my scandal is unlikely to have reached there, and I've read that they're actively seeking teachers for the new settlements." Adam nodded slowly. "It's good country, growing fast. Opportunities for a woman with education." He paused. "When would you go?" Virginia hesitated. "That's where I need your advice. I have no money of my own and the journey would be expensive. I thought perhaps I could find work here, save enough for passage on the stagecoach." "I could lend you the money," Adam offered immediately, "for the stage fare." Virginia shook her head firmly. "You've done more than enough already. I can't take your money too." "It's not charity," Adam argued. "It's a loan. You'll pay me back once you're established." "Even so," Virginia insisted, "I need to do this myself. I've spent my whole life depending on others, my father and then nearly Edmund. I need to prove I can stand on my own." Adam studied her for a long moment, respect evident in his gaze. "I understand that, respect it even," he considered. "There might be work at Willow Bend. Maggie at the cafe was saying she needs help, or Mrs. Thornton at the store." Virginia brightened at the suggestion. "Do you think they'd hire me, even with the assumptions about my relationship with you?" A faint smile touched Adam's lips. "Might make them more likely to hire you, actually. They'd see it as helping you establish some independence." Virginia laughed, shaking her head at the irony. "So I should embrace my reputation as your woman to gain employment." "Welcome to the frontier," Adam replied with a shrug. "Conventional morality takes a back seat to practicality out here." They made plans to ride to Willow Bend the following day, Virginia both excited and nervous at the prospect of seeking her first employment. The conversation shifted to other topics, but there was a new undercurrent between them, an acknowledgement that their time together had a finite end. Later, as Virginia lay in Adam's bed, he still insisted on sleeping by the fire despite her protests. She found herself unexpectedly emotional at the thought of leaving. In just a week, this cabin had begun to feel like home and Adam. Adam had become important to her in ways she hadn't anticipated. She told herself it was natural he had rescued her, sheltered her, shown her kindness when she was most vulnerable. Of course she would feel attached to him, but deep down, she knew it was more than gratitude. There was something about Adam Prescott that called to her, that made her feel understood and valued in ways she never had before. The next morning, they rode to Willow Bend as planned. The day was bright and clear, the Montana summer in full glory. Virginia wore her split riding skirt and shirtwaist, her hair braided and pinned up beneath a practical hat purchased at Mrs. Thornton's store. She looked, she knew, nothing like the pampered banker's daughter she had been just days ago, and she was glad of it. They stopped first at the cafe, where Maggie greeted them warmly. When Virginia inquired about employment, Maggie's face lit up. "Lord, yes, I need the help," she exclaimed. "My daughter who used to help me got married and moved to Bozeman last month, been run off my feet ever since." She eyed Virginia speculatively. "Ever worked in a kitchen before?" Virginia hesitated. "Not professionally, but I'm a quick learner and I'm not afraid of hard work." Maggie glanced at Adam, who gave a slight nod. "She's tougher than she looks," he said. "Been helping around my place this past week. Quick study." That seemed to satisfy Maggie. "All right then. I can offer room and board plus $2 a week. Hours are long dawn till after dinner service. Sundays off." Virginia's heart leapt. It wasn't much, but it was a start, her first step toward independence. "When can I start?" "Tomorrow too soon," Maggie asked with a grin. "Got a room in the back you can use, nothing fancy, mind you." Virginia glanced at Adam, who had been silent during the negotiation. His expression was unreadable, but he nodded encouragingly. "Tomorrow would be perfect," Virginia replied, turning back to Maggie. "Thank you for the opportunity." They stayed for coffee, Maggie chatting amiably about the work and the town. Virginia listened attentively, asking questions and trying to absorb as much information as possible. Adam contributed occasionally, but seemed preoccupied, his gaze frequently drifting to the window. When they left the cafe, Virginia felt both exhilarated and anxious. "I should go back to the cabin with you to gather my things," she said as they walked to where Thunder was hitched. Adam nodded. "We'll ride back today, then I'll bring you and your belongings tomorrow morning." He helped her mount, then swung up behind her. "It's a good opportunity." Maggie's well respected in these parts. Working for her will give you a solid reference when you move on. They rode in silence for a while, Virginia acutely aware of Adam's presence behind her, of the way his arms bracketed her as he held the reins. She would miss this, the easy companionship, the sense of safety, the quiet talks by the fire. "I'll miss the cabin," she said aloud, voicing part of her thoughts. "It's been peaceful there." Adam was quiet for a moment. "You're welcome back anytime, doors always open to you." The simple sincerity of his words touched her deeply. "Thank you for everything." "Nothing to thank me for," Adam replied, his voice low near her ear. "Been nice having company, gets quiet out there alone." The admission, small as it was, revealed more than perhaps Adam intended. Virginia wondered suddenly if he was as reluctant to see her go as she was to leave. But what alternative was there? She couldn't stay indefinitely, living in his cabin, dependent on his charity. She needed to make her own way, to prove to herself that she could survive on her own terms. When they reached the cabin, Virginia set about gathering her few possessions, the clothes from Mrs. Thornton's store, a hairbrush Adam had carved for her from a piece of pine, a book of poetry he had insisted she take as a gift. It took hardly any time at all. She had arrived with nothing but a wedding dress, and she would leave with little more. The wedding dress itself lay folded in a trunk, a reminder of the life she had fled. Virginia considered leaving it behind, a symbolic abandonment of her past, but something stopped her. Perhaps someday she would want that reminder of the moment she had finally found the courage to choose her own path. Adam busied himself with chores outside, giving her space to pack and prepare. When she stepped onto the porch, her small bundle in hand, she found him splitting firewood, his shirt damp with sweat in the afternoon heat. He paused, leaning on the axe as he looked up at her. "All set?" he asked. Virginia nodded. "Yes, it doesn't take long to pack when you own almost nothing." Adam smiled slightly. One advantage of a simple life. He set the axe aside and moved toward the cabin. "I'll wash up, then fix us some dinner. Last meal here should be a good one." The evening passed too quickly for Virginia's liking. They ate the venison stew Adam prepared, talking of practical matters, her job at the cafe, how long it might take her to save for the stagecoach fare, what she might expect in Oregon. But beneath the conversation ran a current of unspoken emotions, of things neither of them quite dared to articulate. As they sat by the fire after dinner, the familiar routine now tinged with the knowledge it was their last evening together, Virginia found herself studying Adam's profile. The firelight softened the hard angles of his face, highlighting the thoughtful intelligence in his eyes, the quiet strength in his bearing. He had become dear to her in ways she hadn't anticipated, this solitary cowboy who had opened not just his cabin but something of his heart to her. "Adam," she said suddenly, her voice soft in the quiet room, "I want you to know how much this time has meant to me, not just the shelter and safety, but everything, the conversations, the lessons, your company." Adam looked up from the fire, his blue eyes reflecting the flames. "Been good for me too," he said simply. "Reminded me there's more to life than just surviving out here alone." Virginia took a deep breath, gathering her courage. "I've been wondering. That is, I've been thinking about why you live out here by yourself. After what happened in Willow Bend with that man Jackson, I understand some of it, but you're not the kind of man who should be alone, Adam." A shadow crossed his face. "Some men are better off keeping to themselves." "I don't believe that," Virginia replied firmly. "Not about you anyway." Adam was silent for a long moment, gazing into the fire. "When I came west," he finally said, his voice low, "I thought I could start fresh, be someone new, but the war, it changes a man, marks him in ways that don't fade." He looked up at her, his expression vulnerable in a way she hadn't seen before. "I've done things, Virginia, things that can't be undone." "We've all done things we regret," Virginia said gently. "Made choices we wish we could take back." Adam shook his head. "Not like this. I led raids on civilian settlements, burned farms, watched people lose everything." His voice grew rough with emotion. "Told myself it was necessary, for the cause, but at night I still see their faces." Virginia moved from her chair to kneel beside him, taking his hand in hers. "The fact that it haunts you, that you carry that weight, that's what makes you a good man, Adam. A truly bad man wouldn't feel remorse." He looked down at their joined hands, then up to her face. "You see good in people, even when maybe it's not there." "I see you," Virginia said simply. "The man who caught my hand when I was running scared, who opened his home to a stranger, who's taught me more about strength and kindness in 1 week than I learned in 22 years in Silver Creek." Something shifted in Adam's expression, a softening, a vulnerability, a tentative hope. For a breathless moment, Virginia thought he might kiss her. She found herself hoping he would, but Adam gently withdrew his hand, rising from his chair. "It's getting late," he said, his voice husky. "Big day tomorrow, you should get some rest." Virginia nodded, trying to hide her disappointment. "Yes, you're right." That night, lying in Adam's bed for the last time, Virginia stared at the ceiling, listening to his steady breathing from his bedroll by the fire. Tomorrow she would begin her new life in Willow Bend, a life of hard work and independence, a step toward the future she had chosen for herself. It was what she wanted, what she needed. So why did it feel like she was leaving something precious behind? The morning came too soon, the first light of dawn filtering through the curtains as Virginia rose and dressed in her work clothes. Adam was already up, tending the fire and preparing a simple breakfast of coffee and biscuits. They ate mostly in silence, both seemingly lost in their own thoughts. After breakfast, Adam saddled Thunder while Virginia gathered her few belongings. The ride to Willow Bend was quiet, the beautiful Montana morning failing to lift the melancholy that had settled between them. Maggie was waiting when they arrived, greeting Virginia warmly and showing her to the small room at the back of the cafe that would be her new home. It was tiny but clean, with a narrow bed, a washstand, and a hook on the wall for her clothes. "It's perfect," Virginia assured Maggie, setting her bundle on the bed. "Thank you again for the opportunity." "Happy to have the help," Maggie replied cheerfully. "I'll let you get settled, then show you around the kitchen." She bustled off, leaving Virginia alone with Adam. He stood awkwardly in the doorway, hat in his hands. "Well," he said after a moment, "reckon this is it." Virginia nodded, her throat suddenly tight. "Yes, I suppose it is." Adam shifted his weight. "I'll be back this way in a week or so. Check how you're settling in." "I'd like that," Virginia replied, trying to sound casual despite the leap her heart gave at his words. Adam nodded, his eyes meeting hers for a long moment. Then he reached into his pocket and pulled out a small object, holding it out to her. "Made this for you, sort of a good luck charm, I guess." Virginia took it from his palm, a small wooden carving of a horse, exquisitely detailed despite its size. "Adam, it's beautiful," she breathed, running her finger over the smooth surface. "Supposed to be thunder," he said, looking slightly embarrassed. "Thought you might want something to remind you of your time at the cabin." The simple gift touched her deeply. "I'll treasure it," Virginia said softly. "Thank you." Adam nodded, jamming his hat back on his head. "Well, I should go, let you get settled." He paused, seeming to struggle with something. "Virginia, I hope you find what you're looking for, here or in Oregon or wherever you end up." Virginia smiled, blinking back unexpected tears. "I hope you do too, Adam." He gave her one last long look, then turned and left, his footsteps echoing down the hallway. Virginia moved to the small window, watching as he mounted Thunder and rode away, his tall figure gradually disappearing down the street. Only when he was gone did she allow a tear to fall, clutching the wooden horse to her chest like a talisman. Life at Maggie's cafe proved both more challenging and more rewarding than Virginia had anticipated. The work was exhausting, long hours on her feet, learning to cook for large numbers, serving the diverse clientele that frequented the establishment. Her hands, already beginning to toughen from her time at Adam's cabin, developed new calluses. Her arms ached from carrying heavy trays, her back from bending over the stove, but there was satisfaction in the work too. Maggie was a patient teacher and a fair employer, praising Virginia's quick learning and introducing her to the regulars as "my new girl from back east." The locals accepted her readily enough, though Virginia was aware of the speculation that surrounded her relationship with Adam Prescott. She neither confirmed nor denied the assumptions, letting people believe what they would. At night, exhausted from the day's labor, Virginia would fall into her narrow bed and dream of the cabin in the woods, of quiet conversations by firelight, of Adam's steady presence and rare smile. She kept the wooden horse on the small table beside her bed, a tangible reminder of the man who had changed the course of her life. True to his word, Adam returned to Willow Bend a week after leaving her there. Virginia's heart leapt when she looked up from serving a table to see him enter the cafe, hat in hand, eyes scanning the room until they found her. She finished taking the order, then approached him, suddenly self-conscious in her plain dress and apron, her hair coming loose from its pins after hours in the hot kitchen. "Adam," she greeted him, unable to keep the pleasure from her voice. "It's good to see you." "Virginia," he replied, his eyes warming as they took in her appearance. "You look well." "I'm surviving," she said with a smile. "Maggie works me hard, but I'm learning a lot. Are you hungry? I can get you something to eat." Adam nodded. "That'd be nice, whatever's good today." Virginia brought him a plate of Maggie's famous beef stew and fresh bread, then, at Maggie's encouraging nod, took her break to sit with him while he ate. "How's Thunder?" she asked, realizing how much she had missed the magnificent horse as well as his owner. "Missing your apples," Adam replied with a small smile. "Had to explain to him that you've moved on to better things." Virginia laughed. "Hardly better, just different." She leaned forward slightly. "Tell me about your week, any new horses to break?" Adam told her about his work. A neighboring rancher had asked him to help with a particularly difficult stallion, and he'd spent several days gentling the animal. Virginia listened eagerly, asking questions and enjoying the familiar cadence of his voice. All too soon, her break was over, and she had to return to work. Adam lingered over his coffee, watching her move around the cafe with growing confidence, exchanging easy banter with the customers. When he finally rose to leave, he approached the counter where she was slicing pie. "You're doing well here," he observed. "Seems to suit you." Virginia smiled, pleased by his approval. "It's a start. I've already saved a little toward my stage fare." Adam nodded, his expression flickering briefly before settling into a neutral mask. "Good, that's good." He placed coins on the counter for his meal. "I should head back, got work waiting." "Will you come again?" Virginia asked, trying not to sound too eager. "Course," Adam replied. "Need to check on my investment, don't I? Make sure you're paying off that clothing debt." Virginia laughed, recognizing his attempt at humor for what it was, a way to cover the emotion that seemed to simmer beneath the surface whenever they were together. Adam's visits became a regular occurrence every week or 10 days. He would ride into Willow Bend on some pretext of supplies or business, always making time to stop at the cafe. Virginia began to structure her days around these visits, volunteering for the shifts when she knew he was most likely to appear. Maggie noticed, of course. Nothing escaped the sharp-eyed cafe owner, especially when it came to matters of the heart. "That cowboy of yours," she remarked one evening as they cleaned up after closing. "He's sweet on you, you know." Virginia nearly dropped the plate she was drying. "Adam, no, we're just friends," Maggie snorted. "Friends, my foot." "Man doesn't ride 20 miles round trip every week just to check on a friend." She gave Virginia a knowing look. "And you're not exactly subtle yourself, girl. Your whole face lights up when he walks through that door." Virginia felt her cheeks warm. "It's complicated," she said finally. "We met under unusual circumstances." "Life's always complicated," Maggie replied pragmatically. "Doesn't change the fact that you two look at each other like you're dying of thirst and the other's a cool spring." Virginia couldn't deny the truth of Maggie's observation. Each time she saw Adam, the connection between them seemed to deepen, the unspoken attraction growing stronger despite her determination to focus on her independence and future plans. For his part, Adam never pushed, never presumed, maintaining a careful distance even as his eyes followed her movements with undisguised admiration. Summer gave way to fall, the Montana landscape transforming into a riot of gold and crimson. Virginia had been working at the cafe for nearly 2 months, saving diligently for her journey to Oregon. She had accumulated almost enough for the stage fare, though the thought of leaving brought her less joy than it once had. One crisp October morning, as Virginia was sweeping the cafe porch before opening, a familiar figure on horseback appeared at the end of the street. She smiled, raising a hand in greeting, but her smile faded as Adam drew closer. His face was grim, his posture tense. "What's wrong?" she asked as he dismounted, tying Thunder to the hitching post. "Got some news," Adam said, his voice tight. "Ryder came by my place yesterday, heading from Silver Creek to Bozeman. Recognized your name when he stopped for water." Virginia's heart sank. "My father," Adam nodded. "He's hired Pinkerton detectives to find you. They've been working their way through the territory, showing your photograph, asking questions." Virginia leaned against the porch railing, suddenly light-headed. "How close are they?" "Too close," Adam replied grimly. "The rider said they were in Clearwater 2 days ago. That's less than 30 miles east of here." Fear gripped Virginia, not just fear of being found, but of being forced to return to Silver Creek, to the life she had fled. "What should I do?" Adam's expression was resolute. "We need to get you out of here, today. But the stagecoach to Oregon doesn't come through until next week, and I haven't quite saved enough." "Forget the stage," Adam cut in. "I'll take you. We can be halfway to the Idaho border by nightfall if we leave now." Virginia stared at him, processing his offer. "You do that? Leave your home, your work, just to help me again?" Something flickered in Adam's eyes, determination, perhaps, or something deeper. "Yes," he said simply. "I would." The certainty in his voice dispelled any doubts. Virginia nodded. "Let me tell Maggie, pack my things. I'll be ready in half an hour." Maggie took the news of Virginia's sudden departure with surprising equanimity. "Wondered when something like this would happen," she said, counting out Virginia's wages plus a little extra. "You've got the look of someone running from something." "I'm sorry to leave you short-handed." Virginia apologized. Touched by the older woman's generosity, Maggie waved away her concern. "You're doing what you need to do, girl. Just be careful out there." She glanced meaningfully toward the front of the cafe, where Adam was loading Virginia's few possessions onto Thunder. "And maybe consider that not all prisons have visible bars. Sometimes they're the ones we build ourselves." Virginia pondered Maggie's cryptic advice as she said her goodbyes and joined Adam outside. He had acquired a second horse, a sturdy bay mare from the livery stable. "Bought her outright," he explained, helping Virginia mount. "Figured we'd make better time with 2 horses. Thunder can carry our supplies." The practicality of his planning touched Virginia deeply. Once again, Adam was appending his own life to help her, asking nothing in return. And once again, she was running not just from her father's detectives, but toward an uncertain future. They rode hard that day, following trails that kept them away from the main roads and settlements. Adam was familiar with the terrain, guiding them through forests and across streams with the confidence of a man who had spent years navigating the wilderness. By nightfall, they had covered nearly 30 miles, making camp in a sheltered hollow near a small creek. As Adam built a fire and prepared a simple meal from their supplies, Virginia found herself watching him with new eyes. The ease with which he adapted to their sudden flight, his unhesitating decision to help her again, the quiet competence with which he managed every aspect of their journey all spoke of a man of exceptional character. "Why are you doing this, Adam?" she asked as they sat by the fire, eating beans and bacon from tin plates. "Truly, you had a life, work, a home, and now you've left it all behind, for me." Adam was silent for a long moment, staring into the flames. "Remember that night before you started at the cafe," he finally said. "You told me I wasn't the kind of man who should be alone." He looked up, meeting her gaze across the fire. "Made me start thinking about my life, about the walls I'd built around myself since the war." Virginia held her breath, sensing they were approaching something important. "Then you came to Willow Bend," Adam continued, his voice low. "And I'd ride in to see you, watch you building your new life, making friends, working toward your dreams. And I'd ride back to that empty cabin and realize it was just a place to hide, not really living at all." "Adam," Virginia whispered, her heart pounding. He set his plate aside, leaning forward. "When I heard about those Pinkertons, my first thought wasn't about your safety, though that came quick enough. My first thought was that I couldn't bear the idea of you disappearing from my life. Of riding into Willow Bend one day and finding you gone." The raw honesty in his words moved her deeply. "I've been saving for Oregon," she said softly, "but every time I counted my money I felt this heaviness, the thought of leaving, of never seeing you again." Adam rose from his place, moving to sit beside her on the log she'd chosen as a seat. "Virginia," he said, taking her hand in his, "I'm not asking you to give up your dreams, your independence. That's important to you and it should be." "But," she prompted, sensing there was more. "But I'm wondering if maybe we could find our dreams together," Adam said, his voice rough with emotion. "If you'd consider letting me come with you to Oregon, or staying in Montana, or going somewhere else entirely, I don't much care where, as long as..." "As long as what?" Virginia asked, her heart in her throat. "As long as we're together," Adam finished simply. Virginia looked into his eyes, seeing all the things he couldn't quite put into words, the loneliness he'd endured, the hope she'd awakened, the love that had grown between them despite all odds. "I think," she said slowly, "that I've been running away for so long that I didn't recognize when I found something worth running toward." She squeezed his hand. "When I found you." Adam's face transformed, hope blooming in his eyes. "Is that a yes?" Virginia smiled, tears gathering in her eyes. "Yes, to being together, to finding our dreams together, yes to all of it." Adam reached up, his calloused hand gently cupping her cheek. "May I kiss you, Virginia Harrington?" "I wish you would, Adam Prescott," she whispered. His lips met hers, tentative at first, then with growing confidence as she responded eagerly. It was nothing like Virginia had imagined. Her first kiss would be sitting on a log in the wilderness, dressed in dusty clothes, pursued by detectives. And yet it was perfect, a culmination of the connection that had been building between them since the moment he had caught her hand on the outskirts of Silver Creek. When they finally parted, Adam rested his forehead against hers. "Been wanting to do that since I found you in that ridiculous red wedding dress," he admitted with a small smile. Virginia laughed softly. "I'm glad you waited. I needed to find myself first, to know I could stand on my own before I chose to stand with someone else." Adam nodded, understanding in his eyes. "And now I know," Virginia said simply. "I've proven to myself that I can make my own way, and I choose to make it with you." They talked long into the night, planning their future together. Oregon still appealed to Virginia, with its growing communities and need for teachers. Adam was amenable, pointing out that his skills with horses would be valuable anywhere. They would head west, taking their time, perhaps working along the way to build their resources. "I want to do this right," Adam said as they prepared for sleep, spreading their bedrolls side by side but maintaining a respectful distance. "Court you properly." Virginia smiled, touched by his old-fashioned sensibilities. "We're hardly in a conventional situation, Adam." "All the more reason to respect certain traditions," he replied firmly. "I want you as my wife, Virginia, not my traveling companion." The word wife sent a thrill through Virginia, not of fear, as it had when associated with Edmund Blackwell, but of joy and anticipation. "Are you proposing, Mr. Prescott?" she asked teasingly. Adam's expression grew serious. "Not yet. When I do, it'll be proper, with a ring and everything, when we're settled somewhere and I can offer you a real home." Virginia reached across the space between their bedrolls, taking his hand. "I don't need a fancy proposal or a big house, Adam. The cabin was more of a home to me than my father's mansion ever was." Adam squeezed her hand. "Still, I want to do right by you." They fell asleep holding hands, the stars wheeling overhead, the future stretching before them, uncertain in its details but secure in its foundation. The journey west was neither quick nor easy. Winter was approaching, making mountain travel increasingly dangerous. After consulting maps and gathering information from settlers they encountered, Adam and Virginia decided to head south first into Wyoming territory, where they could find work for the winter months before continuing to Oregon in the spring. They reached the small town of Pine Ridge, Wyoming, just as the first heavy snows began to fall. It was a rough-hewn settlement, centered around a sawmill that processed timber from the surrounding forests. The population was primarily male lumberjacks, mill workers, and the businesses that served them, but there were a few families as well, giving the town a more permanent feel than many frontier settlements. Adam quickly found work at the livery stable, his way with horses earning him the respect of the owner. Virginia, to her surprise, was offered a position teaching at the town's small school after the previous teacher eloped with a traveling salesman. The one-room schoolhouse had 15 students ranging from 6 to 16, presenting a challenge that Virginia embraced with enthusiasm. They rented a small cabin on the edge of town, just 2 rooms, but solidly built, and with a good stove that kept out the Wyoming winter chill. Adam insisted on separate sleeping areas, converting a storage alcove into a tiny bedroom for himself, while Virginia took the proper bedroom. His insistence on propriety earned them the respect of the townspeople, who might otherwise have judged them harshly. As winter settled over Pine Ridge, Virginia and Adam fell into a comfortable routine. They would breakfast together before heading to their respective jobs, then reunite in the evening to share the day's events over dinner. Adam proved to be as capable a cook in their cabin as he had been in his Montana home, though Virginia was rapidly improving her own culinary skills under his tutelage. In the evenings, they would sit by the fire, reading or talking or simply enjoying each other's company. Sometimes Adam would play the harmonica, a skill Virginia hadn't known he possessed until he produced the instrument from his saddlebag one snowy evening. He wasn't a virtuoso, but the simple melodies he coaxed from the instrument filled their small home with warmth. Christmas approached, bringing with it community gatherings and celebrations that drew them deeper into the life of Pine Ridge. Virginia organized a Christmas pageant with her students, while Adam helped construct a community Christmas tree in the town square. They were becoming part of something, putting down tentative roots in this temporary home. On Christmas Eve, After returning from the community celebration at the church, Adam seemed unusually nervous, pacing their small cabin while Virginia prepared hot chocolate on the stove. "Is something wrong?" she asked, concerned by his uncharacteristic restlessness. Adam stopped pacing, turning to face her with an expression that made her heart skip. "Not wrong, just important." He took a deep breath. "I know I said I wanted to wait until we were permanently settled, but it's Christmas, and we've made a real home here, even if it's temporary, and I don't want to wait anymore." Virginia set down the pot of chocolate, her hands suddenly trembling. "Adam," he crossed to her in 2 strides, taking her hands in his. "Virginia Harrington, you changed my life the moment you ran across that field in your wedding dress. You brought light back into a world I thought would always be shadowed by the past." He reached into his pocket, producing a small velvet pouch. "I love you. Will you marry me?" Tears filled Virginia's eyes as Adam emptied the pouch into his palm, revealing a delicate gold ring with a small but brilliant diamond. "It's beautiful," she whispered. "How did you?" "Been saving," Adam admitted. "Wanted it to be special." Virginia looked from the ring to his face, seeing all the love and hope he held for her. "Yes," she said, her voice clear and certain. "Yes, I will marry you, Adam Prescott." The ring slid perfectly onto her finger as if it had been made for her. Adam lifted her hand to his lips, pressing a kiss to her knuckles just above the gleaming band. "I promise to always catch your hand when you're running," he said softly, "and to always have a home to offer you wherever we may go." Virginia rose on tiptoe to kiss him, pouring all her love and joy into the embrace. When they finally parted, she rested her head against his chest, listening to the steady beat of his heart. "When?" she asked simply. "Soon," Adam replied, his arms tightening around her. "Before we leave for Oregon, I don't want to wait any longer than necessary." They were married in Pine Ridge's small church on a bright, cold February morning. Virginia wore a simple blue dress that Maggie had sent when Adam managed to get word to her about their engagement. Adam wore his best shirt and a new vest, his dark hair neatly trimmed for the occasion. The church was full not just with the friends they had made in Pine Ridge, but with a surprise visitor. Maggie herself had made the journey from Willow Bend, bringing with her news that the Pinkerton detectives had abandoned their search, recalled by Howard Harrington after months of fruitless effort. "You're free, girl," Maggie told Virginia before the ceremony. "Free to go where you please without looking over your shoulder." It was the best wedding gift they could have received, the knowledge that they could truly start fresh, without fear of the past intruding on their future. The ceremony itself was simple, but meaningful. Virginia and Adam spoke their vows with clear voices and full hearts, promising to love and cherish each other through whatever life might bring. When the preacher pronounced them husband and wife, Adam's kiss was tender but held a promise of passion that made Virginia blush beneath her borrowed veil. The celebration afterward was jubilant, the whole town turning out to wish the popular couple well. There was dancing and feasting, laughter and a few happy tears. As evening fell and the party continued, Adam drew Virginia outside into the crisp winter air. "Happy, Mrs. Prescott?" he asked, his arms around her waist as they gazed up at the star-filled Wyoming sky. "Happier than I ever thought possible," Virginia replied, leaning into his embrace. "And you, Mr. Prescott, more than I deserve," Adam said honestly. "Never thought I'd find this kind of happiness, not after everything." Virginia turned in his arms to face him. "You deserve every happiness, Adam, and I intend to spend our life together making sure you know that." His kiss was answer enough, warming her despite the winter chill. Spring came early to Wyoming that year, the snow melting to reveal the first green shoots by mid-March. Adam and Virginia prepared for the next leg of their journey, saying goodbye to the friends they had made in Pine Ridge with promises to write once they were settled in Oregon. They traveled slowly, savoring their time together as newlyweds, stopping in small settlements along the way to rest, and occasionally work for a week or two to replenish their funds. Virginia kept a journal of their journey, recording their adventures and the growing bond between them as they faced the challenges of the trail together. By late summer, they reached the lush Willamette Valley in Oregon. The fertile land was rapidly being settled, with new communities springing up around mills and farms. They explored several settlements before finding one that felt right, a growing town called Riverside, nestled along a tributary of the Willamette River. Riverside needed both a teacher and a man with Adam's skills with horses. The local ranchers were expanding their operations, and a new livery stable was under construction. It seemed the perfect place to put down roots, to build the life they had been planning since that night by the campfire. They purchased a plot of land on the outskirts of town, 5 acres, with a small, somewhat dilapidated house that Adam immediately began to renovate and expand. Virginia took the position at the town school, quickly winning the respect of both students and parents with her dedication and innovative teaching methods. As autumn painted the Oregon landscape in brilliant hues, Virginia made a discovery that brought new joy to their already happy life. The persistent fatigue she had been experiencing, the subtle changes in her body, they had a cause, one that filled her with both excitement and trepidation. She told Adam on a Sunday afternoon as they sat on the porch of their half-renovated home, watching the sunset paint the sky in shades of pink and gold. "Adam," she said, taking his hand and placing it gently on her still flat stomach, "we're going to have a baby." His expression transformed from confusion to wonder to joy in the span of seconds. "A baby," he repeated, his voice hushed with awe. "You're certain?" Virginia nodded, tears of happiness gathering in her eyes. "The doctor confirmed it yesterday. In the spring, we'll be 3 instead of 2. Adam gathered her into his arms, his own eyes suspiciously bright. "A family," he whispered against her hair. "Our family." In that moment, Virginia thought back to the day she had fled her wedding, running blindly from a future she couldn't accept. How strange and wonderful that her desperate flight had led her here to this man, this love, this life growing within her. The road had been neither straight nor easy, but every step had brought her closer to where she was meant to be. "I love you, Adam Prescott," she said, resting her head against his shoulder as they watched the stars emerge in the darkening sky. "Thank you for catching my hand that day." Adam pressed a kiss to her temple, his hand gently cradling the place where their child grew. "Best thing I ever did," he replied simply. "Caught your hand and found my heart." Daniel Adam Prescott was born on a bright April morning in 1887, arriving with a lusty cry that announced his presence to the world. He had his father's blue eyes and his mother's determined chin, a combination that both delighted and slightly terrified his parents. "He's going to be strong-willed," Virginia predicted as she cradled her newborn son, exhausted but radiant after the long labor. "Like his mother," Adam observed.